Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationship Advice and it's by user Jesus Tunafish. My 28 female boyfriend, 29 male, and his best friend, 29 female, are going on a week-long vacation. They uninvited me. My boyfriend wanted to go on vacation this summer to his mom's friend's house in Hawaii with me and his two best friends, Jake, 25 male, and Julie, 29 female. We had been planning on this all spring, and at some point, Jake dropped out of the trip, leaving just the three of us. For context, my boyfriend and I have been going for a little over 10 months and it's been serious. We had, and still have, been talking about moving in together, and he has said, and I agree, that this is a long-term situation and that we are in it for good. When Jake unexpectedly dropped out of the trip, Julie called my boyfriend and told him that now that it was just the three of us, she didn't feel comfortable with me going on the trip, since she didn't know me that well and she didn't want to be a third wheel. She said that if I were to go, she wouldn't go on the trip. Without telling me that this was happening, they changed the plans and made it a trip just the two of them, and they changed the location to a beach in Costa Rica. I was trying to figure out when to ask for time off this summer and hadn't heard the news about the plans, so I asked my boyfriend when it would be best for me to set aside vacation time for the Hawaii trip. He let me know that actually he had talked to his friends and that she didn't want to go if I were going, so he was going to go alone with her to Costa Rica. He said that we could go another week later, maybe to Mexico City or something. I was upset and tried to talk with him about how the situation made me feel, especially since this wasn't a case of a separate trip being set up ahead of time. This was a case of me being invited and then uninvited from a week-long tropical vacation with a female friend of his who I had never met before. We eventually decided to do a trip together to Copenhagen, which we have both wanted to visit, as some sort of compensation. I also asked to meet her so that I could feel more comfortable with the trip. We spent a long weekend going to see her and her boyfriend in the city where they live, and although it was nice to put a face to a name, it was ultimately a very cold trip and she was not at all welcoming to me. My boyfriend remarked on how unfriendly she was to both of us. He thought and said that he was surprised that she didn't act warmly to me. I went out of my way to try to get to know her and her boyfriend. I'm very outgoing and friendly, and usually this would be easy, but it didn't really click, even after several days. They were somewhat cold to each other as well. They bickered a little bit about their future and his own 3-week trip without her that was scheduled for the same time as their trip. This had been scheduled before ours had. This had been my effort to feel better about the trip, so I told my boyfriend that I still didn't feel comfortable with things and that I was feeling insulted by the way that it was handled. I had tried to make things smooth between all of us, and I asked him to please come up with something that could help me feel better about the trip. Then, when visiting his family, they asked about the trip and they were all shocked that he would have arranged it this way and let me know that they would have been furious if they were in my position. Which triggered a fight in which I asked him to please help me come up with a strategy to make me feel better and more secure about them going together without me. He said that he would never do this kind of thing again, which feels like not much to offer since this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime trip to begin with. He kind of offered to not go on the trip, but he had already paid for the tickets and made arrangements, and I didn't want to stop their trip and be resented by both him and his best friend. He asked me to give him ideas of how to make me feel better and wanted me to just tell him what to do and stalled until it was finally the day of the trip. He bought me a bag of peanut butter cups and I drove the two of them to the airport. I feel so disregarded and disrespected in this situation. I want to break up with him, but I don't want to burn up something that has otherwise been really good. What? This is so wrong, OP. So wrong. Your feelings of disrespect and disregard are absolutely valid, and if you want to break up with him, I don't think anybody would ever blame you for that. You've been a part of this trip's planning since the beginning. And if Julie doesn't want to feel like a third wheel because her boyfriend is not coming, then I would believe that the right thing to do would be her saying, you know what guys, I'm not gonna go either, so let's plan another trip, just the four of us, somewhere else. You two enjoy a week in Hawaii. See you then. But no, she guilts your boyfriend into uninviting you, and that idiot followed through. I don't care if the tickets were already paid for Costa Rica. The original destination was Hawaii. He changed the destination, bought the tickets, and then told you. That would have been my cue to leave this relationship that's not even a year old, OP. And if the situation was reversed, I'm pretty sure your boyfriend wouldn't have been cool with you going with a male best friend to a tropical destination for a week, just the two of you. This has sketchy written all over it, and I'm not even gonna dig into what's going on between Jake and Julie. That's their business, but it permeated onto yours. And what do you guys think about this whole situation? What would your advice be for OP? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Makeup and Justice says, I had a similar experience a few years back. In my case, unbeknownst to me, my boyfriend had made it public knowledge to his friends that he wasn't as serious about me as I was about him, while dropping hints to me that he wanted to move in together. He booked a trip, a female friend of his ended up planning to join him, and he didn't tell me until a couple of days before he left. I also found her very cold to me and wondered if something was going on, and she had just broken up with her boyfriend. It turns out she was cold to me because she saw me as temporary, so not worth getting to know. I'm sure this is also why she thought it was okay to schedule a trip alone with him. Long story short, maybe your partner is not as serious about the two of you as he's leading you to believe. Either way, this is a huge red flag, and you'll thank yourself down the line if you end things with him. LucyCat777 says, if you were my close friend, I would say you should dump him and not be around when he gets back. No explanation needed. Leave a Dear John note or text him on the last day of the trip and then block him. That is crazy disrespectful, and I don't know why you'd want to date someone who would make plans with another woman who is interested in him. He's not worth it. I promise. Go out there and find someone who deserves you. Mama Hazard says, that girl could not make it more blatantly obvious that she wants your boyfriend. She isn't happy in her relationship, so she wants yours. I would give him an ultimatum, her or you. While flights have been arranged, the occupant can be changed at little to no cost. Either you go or they can choose each other and you peace out. And OP responds, they already took off. I took them to the airport. Sad face. But I do want to communicate to him, even if it's too late, how hurtful it is, and I do want to give some sort of ultimatum. Additional information from OP's comments. My boyfriend has been best friends with Julie for 10 years. He did try to date her and she chose her current boyfriend over him. I'm very sad and I can't decide whether this is something that we could recover from. I lean towards not. My brother told me that if it was worth it to me, then I should call him and insist that he take the next flight back. But the longer he goes without calling me, the more disinclined I am to want to salvage this. I feel like if he were truly concerned, he wouldn't be texting me that he hopes I'm okay since I'm not answering. Good night. A text, no call, no FaceTime. In my opinion, very low effort considering that I have not responded. The trip was planned with me from the start. That's a point that I have specifically gone over him as one of the primary issues for me about the uninvitation. It wasn't a friend trip that I was crashing. Regardless of how the conversation about this vacation went between the two of them, I wasn't party to it, obviously. He chose to tell me that she said that she wouldn't go if I did because of the reasons I gave in the post, and he agreed to change plans. If it was his idea, no way for me to know if he was lying, and even in that case, still crappy. OP's short-term update. I texted him that it's over, and he tried to call and I didn't pick up. He texted me that he was sorry that I feel this way and that he loves me and wouldn't want to hurt me. I haven't responded and I won't respond for a long time, at least not until he's back. Not interested in reconciliation. He left his house and car keys with me, so I packed up all of his things and everything he has ever given me because I don't want them, and I put them at his house and took my things back from his, and I left a note detailing the 2 things we need to sort out in person and to text me when he got back. I gave his keys to his neighbor. I also really did want it to work out, and I wanted things to go well with his friend and to not come in between them and not be the crazy girlfriend who overreacts. It was a lot of money that he invested in the trip, and they have been friends for an extremely long time. Ultimately, it was beyond me to hang in there though, once I've met her and got a better feel for the reality of the situation. I think that we will be better off going our separate ways, and that is the solution that makes me happy. Hope that's sufficient update. I'm drained. Well, I think OP got some really good advice, except for that last commenter that told OP to do the pick me ultimatum. I think that's horrible advice. In any case, OP did the right thing. No pick me dance, no nothing, she just ended things and took everything out. However, the story doesn't end here, we still have one more update from OP because the boyfriend hasn't given up. So let's move on with that to see how this story ends, but before that, I'm gonna recommend another playlist like this one so that you guys can enjoy it after this video. Just click on the link. Now, let's move on to the update to this story. I was really upset the day I dropped him off and he was texting me, but I wasn't responding. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do anything at all in the state I was in. I waited until the next day and then I sent him a thought-out text telling him how I didn't feel safe or loved in the way the trip was handled and that I would be dropping his things off at his place and leaving his keys with the neighbor. He called but didn't leave any messages, and then he messaged me that he didn't understand. The rest of the week he called and messaged me, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up or text back. On the Thursday of that week, I think that he realized that I was serious, and he asked me some questions about logistical things. I told him which neighbor his key was with, etc. When he got back and saw all his things at his place, he got pretty frantic and called and left a long message. I was working all day, but I also still didn't want to respond. He asked me to explain because he didn't understand what was going on. The next day, I sent another text making it clear that it was over, and he got upset and sent me a bunch of texts in a row about how he didn't understand why I was throwing away everything that we built. He left me a voicemail that was really angry, that said he had no idea why I was upset and that he did not accept the breakup because he had no say in it, and that he wanted me to tell him the evil story that I made up about him to his face. I wasn't going to respond to him and I wanted to remain calm, but this upset me. So I sat down to write him this letter. It's long, so have patience. I tried to call him, but I started crying and told him I'd just send him an email instead. This is what I said. The time that we have had apart has given me some good space and time to think. I have had the chance to think about the things that are important to me in the relationship, and I see that we should not be together. I am sorry that I have been asking for you to change things about your life that you shouldn't have to change at my or anyone's behest. From the very start, this trip was made in an insanely disrespectful way in which it started out from you being given an ultimatum by your female best friend who I had never met, that either she goes or I go on this trip, and you picked her.
You chose poorly.
You didn't offer to have her meet me. Theoretically, I was your long-term partner, so this would have made a lot of sense. You didn't encourage her to find someone else to come, and you didn't consult me at all. That's enough for most people to have a deal breaker right there. However, I stayed. This is a person who you have a history with that is not entirely clear to me. Here's what I understand. Some bad rumors got started about the two of you in which you spent an entire night out with her on an acid trip while you were dating someone else. Nothing happened. The other thing I understand is that you were interested in her romantically at some other point in time, but she started dating her boyfriend, and that closed the door on things for you. According to what I also understand, it took a long time for Jake to feel comfortable with you being around, but you apparently worked to ultimately make him feel comfortable with you after I'm not sure how long. This is the completely unknown person who shut me out of a trip that I was originally going to go on. Unilateral decision. You did not tell me this was happening until I asked when the trip to Hawaii would be. You purchased the tickets in another very disrespectful situation. We had guests and I had cooked dinner, yet you chose to go into my room for well over an hour to select tickets with her. I repeatedly asked you to please come back to dinner, but your answer each time was that it will just be a few more minutes. There was absolutely no reason for doing it at that time. So, to make myself feel better about this whole arrangement, I tell you that I want to meet this person. On my request, we arrange a trip to go meet her and her boyfriend, a trip in which they are, and you explicitly agree, inexplicably cold. The first conversation that we have is one in which Julie and Jake argue about how she DM'd him while he was already in a relationship and got him to date her instead. You tell me about conversations that Julie has had with you recently, in which it seems implied that there is some real instability in their relationship. I tell you that this worries me. Meanwhile, I am still wanting all of this to work out for you and for me and for her. At this point, I'm planning on being with you for the long term and see no benefit in telling you to not go on a trip with your best friend. I want it to work out, but each and every interaction surrounding this trip chips and chips and chips away at my ability to handle it. The conversations that seem to go nowhere, etc. Your dad, your mom, and your grandparents are all very surprised when we tell them about this trip. It's becoming very obvious that this is a dangerous trip to make with the fragility of our relationship. We had only been together for 9 months. How long did it take before Jake was comfortable with you hanging around, much less going on a one-on-one international tropical vacation in which he was uninvited because of your request? Hypothetical. We go over it with a friend at the rock climbing gym. We go over it in the car. We go over it while we're booking our Airbnb for Copenhagen. We go over it while I tell you that I still feel uncomfortable and I do not feel good about this trip. Talk about repeatedly saying something. Although I ask for you to help me, you actually ask me instead to come up with what would make me feel better. Surprisingly, I have no ideas either. Ultimately, the original plan to meet at my place and hang out and do a game night before you two go on the trip has been cancelled. And Julie will be staying at my place but not hanging out with us at all beforehand. You attribute it to you not bringing it up with her early enough. This is apparently not something that was discussed even 2 nights before the trip. This upsets me. You do not know what to do, and I don't blame you. It was well out of hand. I don't know what to do either. There is no good solution that I can think of besides waiting for the trip to be over. I tell you that either I have to get over it or I have to break up with you, and that I don't want to break up with you, but my ability to get over it is worn down. She arrives at my place very late and we wake up the next morning for me to take the 2 of you to the airport. After all this lead up, I know you can tell how unhappy I am. I fully, absolutely know you can tell how unhappy I am. You leave, and when I don't respond to your text messages, you text me to tell me that you hope I'm okay and you're going to bed. No call. The rest of the week was rough. My text to you was met with essentially, "I'm sorry you feel this way." You tell me that I'm being unfair. There is no acknowledgement that this trip to an effing honeymoon destination could be a crazy and horrible thing to go through with, even with my quasi-blessing. This is not something that people in relationships do. Besides Julie, I guess. In the end, all of this is to say that I have felt serious emotional needs go seriously unmet in a way that is a deal breaker for me. There have been some wonderful, very positive times, but there has been an unnecessary amount of heartache and suffering for me over things that come down to what I can only assume are personal differences. I cannot handle your relationship with Julie, and I suppose I could ask you to pick between her and me, but that's not what I want to do. I want you to have your best friend, and I want to leave. I did love you, but I am not about to fight this fight and hear you tell me that I'm crazy for not seeing how totally platonic everything is for the rest of my life. I am not happy in this, and I do not want to feel these feelings any longer. I do not need your permission to break up with you. He wrote me back an apologetic email in which he accepted responsibility for most things without any argument, except he denied anything that had to do with his responsibility with her making me feel uncomfortable, and he denied that I would not be able to handle their relationship. He said that the only thing that made their trip bad for me was my own perspective. I wrote him back that trust has to be built, and that he put too much strain too early on a relationship in which we had not developed that trust. He agreed and apologized. For me, it ended on a pretty amicable note, but this style of relationship really doesn't work for me, and I don't feel like his response to me really healed or changed anything significantly. I stand by my decision at this point. Extended from OP's comments. About Jake's trip, he already had his own trip planned without her beforehand. He was never going on the Hawaii trip and was never part of the group that was planning to go. I do think that this trip was a way for Julie to feel better about him leaving her for his own trip, to be honest. My ex wrote me a letter which was very remorseful. He also met with a mutual friend to talk with her. He told her he has been asking people around him if what he did was wrong and has been getting a 50-50 response. She backed me up but felt like he still doesn't really get it. We are just not a good match. I hope we both find people who are better suited to each other. Well, OP, even though your relationship ended, I'm gonna call this a happy update because you got rid of the idiot. Good for you. I believe he chose poorly, but it's his choice to make. You are out of there and you're gonna move on with your life. So all the best in the future, OP. I do hope you meet somebody who's better suited for you. Take care and thank you for sharing. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.